My revenge has just begun. I spread it over the centuries, and time is on my side. Bram Stoker, Count Dracula.
I renounce him!
He's dead, he's dead. Bela Lugosi's dead, he's dead, he's dead. Bela Lugosi's dead.
The Abracast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
Society 13 Podcast Network. Redefining podcasts. Society-13.com.
I like to listen.
All right, welcome to the Abracast, episode 33. It hits me now that I should have did some Masonic shit for this episode, but I didn't. Last week, we talked about the Allagash abductions. So this week we're gonna get we're gonna go down. Well, this week we could have went down a bunch of different avenues. Like, what do you want me to talk about? Do you want me to talk about how Katy Perry's new video, or their new song, is all about licking assholes? Do you want to talk about the Antikythera machine, which is actually pretty fascinating? Do you want to talk about what the word fascist really means? That's an episode that I'm going to get to, because I'm tired of everyone just fucking throwing it around. Do you want to talk about Dunkirk? The movie's about to come out, and it's a fascinating piece of World War II history. Do you want to talk about the Antichrist-like bent of the last two Marvel movies? Do you want to talk about what a special counsel is? Well, we could talk about any of those items, but instead we're going to observe the anniversary of one of the best Gothic novels ever published. Of course, I'm talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula. We're creeping up on the anniversary here. So I thought I would take a moment to talk about that. So instead, dear listeners, we're going to step backwards into history and talk a little bit about the Impaler Lord, Vlad Tepes, the man known as Vlad Dracula. I also like to remind you to support the show. I'm not over here selling you snack boxes and underpants. You jerk. You want to support the show, you know how to do it. Share it. You think that you know some weird people that might like this shit? Fucking send them a link. You want to support the show another way? You can buy some comic books. Chances are, if you like the topics that we tackle, on the show, you might dig the comic books as well. And they're pretty inexpensive, and it's a dying fucking art form anyways. They're all turned into movies now. I got a short story coming up soon. I know I keep fucking saying that, but this is what you got when you're dealing with indie publishers, everybody. Not to talk bad about my Burning Ball Press people, but there's a lot of links and everybody's busy and timelines are hard to fucking wrangle up. I got some new books in the works. I know I keep saying that too, but I promise I control that shit, and I promise there's some shit coming up that you guys are not going to believe. I just drew a sequence. I just drew a 2-page spread on, Stitch killing goat bitches. They're these witches that are the sisters of Capricorn. So you don't want to miss that because they got boobs. I mean, come on. How bad can it be? All right, so we're not going to be talking about the Goofy monster movie. Listen, hold on. I like Bela Lugosi as much as the next guy, but we're going to be talking about the guy. We're going to actually talk about the real dude. It's so much more interesting. I remember when I saw the, what was it, 92, 93, the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie with Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder and Neo. That opening sequence where he's fighting the Turks and he's fucking impaling them and he's renouncing God and he's fucking stabs the cross and blood shoots out of it and he's like drinking the blood that's pouring out of the cross and his dead wife's being like, there's just blood fucking everywhere. I was like, that whole movie should be like this, yo. We don't even need to go to London. Just give you some more of that shit. So that's what we're going to fucking get into, man. This guy's life is fucking amazing, and the shit that he did was fucking crazy and amazing. And we're just gonna wind up. Hold on. Yeah, we're just gonna wind up and get into this. So mix up your Jin Jihad. Mix it up good with your impaling spike or your spear or whatever, your some shit. We're gonna talk about the Impaler Lord Vlad the Impaler. I really am bringing the energy, right?
The Ages begins with the shocking story of Cain and Abel and the journey of violence and revenge spanning thousands of years, following Cain through his cursed life from an ancient invasion of malicious angels to the American Revolutionary War. A masterful, compelling journey through time, The Ages delves deep into arcane knowledge, myth, and legend. The art is stunning, and the story takes you on a journey where mortals, immortals, angels, and demons are all forced to deal with the folly that is God's creation. It's a beautifully dark and gritty ride through history. This 4-part story follows the astrological procession of the ages and how each 2,500-year age parallels major changes in the development of Earth's inhabitants. Cain's blasphemous struggle with the divine and sacred tyrant God will create and crumble empires, shape history, and cause a cosmic cataclysm.
Vienna,
God damn it. Every fucking time. So we're going to talk a little, in order to understand, okay. A lot of shit's been said about Vlad Tepes or Vlad Dracula. He's shrouded in mystery because records weren't that good back then. And he was struggling for his throne in a super violent, treacherous time. The boy who would become the Impaler was, in that time, what would become Romania is Wallachia, and Transylvania was kind of crushed between these two these two superpowers at the time. Well, the Ottoman Empire was like the superpower, and then there was the von Habsburgs in Hungary that was the other side. So they were like always like crushed in between them, and they are actually enemies and allies with both of them. It is politically fluid back in those days. They were surrounded by enemies, and they had a local ruling class. They were squabbling with their neighbor kings, and of course, the superpower of the time, the Ottoman fucking Empire. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. In order to understand the Impaler's childhood, we have to understand the man that he became. Vlad the Third, Vlad Tepes or Vlad Dracul, was born in the early 15th century, somewhere around 1428 and 1431. His dad, Vlad Dracul, or Vlad II, taking the name Dracul after being initiated into the chivalric Order of the Dragon. It's like the Knights Templar or something. It was like the Shriners. It was like the Shriners of the day. But he really took this shit seriously. Like, he changed his family crest and put this fucking dragon on it. And he changed his name to the fucking dragon. I'm Vlad the Dragon. And his son, Vlad III, adopted it as well, and he became Vlad Dracula, which is like Vlad the Little Dragon, I guess. Vlad II was the ruler of Wallachia, a position that the Impaler would go on to hold 3 times before his death. He had a brother named Radu. Radu is a piece of work. We're gonna talk about Radu a little later. So the Ottoman Empire had a lot of political power in the region at the time. Like I said, they were doing everything they could to push into Europe, and the Vatican and Hungary were trying to keep them out of Europe, which made this Transylvania Wallachia region like ground zero for a lot of shady bullshit. We're going to get into some of it too. Vlad II sort of politically crossed the Ottoman Sultan Murad II by not supporting the Ottoman invasion of Transylvania in 1442. Now, you think about this now, and you're like, why would they support them? Why would they not support them? Why would they push them off? Shouldn't we be like united front against these aggressors from Turkey? But again, it's at the same time, it's like everyone was just scrambling to find a political end for all their stuff. So Vlad II kind of fucked over this Murad II, who was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire at the time. And he summoned Vlad II. You're going to get sick of me doing Vlad II, Vlad III, Vladislav. You're going to get tired of it, but it's the only way I can keep it straight in my head, because there's a lot of Vlads. So the Sultan summoned Vlad II in an attempt to leverage Vlad II for his loyalty. He locked up Vlad III and Radu as prisoners. Now, there's going to be a bone of contention here. A lot of people are going to be like, no, they were courtesans. They didn't, whatever. But I'm telling you, I don't think these fucking stuck-up sultans are going to put up with no kuffars laying around in their court. Like, I believe these guys were probably getting trained or taught or trying to convert them or something. I can't find anything that really details this, except for this Radu thing, which we're going to get into later. This is Stockholm Syndrome or something. In fact, they also locked up the dad, Vlad II, but they let him go within a year. Vlad II was still sort of acted a fool after they let him out, because he turned around and supported the King of Poland and Hungary against the Ottomans, and he figured his boys were already, as he said, quote, butchered for the sake of Christian peace, unquote. So he wrote his boys off, I think. He was just like, man, they're going to kill those boys. Sometime after 1447, Vlad and Radu had somehow freed themselves or was let go, and they fled to Wallachia. So they were locked up there for like six years, we think. Some people are saying that because they let them both go at the same time, they were able to flee to Wallachia. The father, Vlad II, probably paid some kind of ransom for their release. I don't know. I can't find any evidence to support that hypothesis. They probably spent 6 years in a stinking Ottoman dungeon. They were like 14 to 20 years old. They were basically raised by these fucking savages. It's funny, when I'm writing my lesson plan, I say stuff like this, but I'm like, I just called them savages. It's all a matter of perspective, I suppose. So there was a lot of political intrigue that happened after the boys left. John Hunyadi, who was the king of Poland and Transylvania, he was the dude that Vlad II supported earlier in our story, killed Vlad II and his brother. He actually fucking did his brother wrong. He fucking blinded him with red hot pokers and buried him alive. So this is the world in which this Vlad kid's growing up. So you're saying he's a savage and he sticks in people's butts. And you're like, well, look at this shit. Will ya? I mean, look at it. Yeah. So they buried his uncle alive, and they put his nephew. I think it was his nephew, Vladislav II, was going to be the new ruler of Wallachia. So just hang tight. We're going to be right back with The Rise of the Lord Impaler.
Vienna, 1683. Today is September 11th, 1683. The mighty army of the Ottoman Empire, led by the savage and radical terror troops of the Dar al-Harb, surround the walled city of Vienna and begin a siege to break the golden apple of Europe and kill, enslave, or convert all of its inhabitants. The valiant citizens stand against the tyrannical army with the steadfast leadership of Count Ernst Rudiger von Stromberg, the help of the ever-living rebel Cyrus the Dead Guy, and the hopes of the faraway King Jan Sobieski III and his army of flying hussars. The Vienna 1683 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us. The Non-Standard Squad, 1944. World War II. 3 weird American soldiers are on a search and rescue mission into the oldest and darkest regions of Europe. A cursed, ever-living warrior, Cyrus the Dead Guy. An experimental warbot, Sergeant Lane McCord. An all-red axe, mysterious rogue with a demon-possessed arm, come face-to-face with an army of magically corrupted machine-obsessed elves, a magic hammer-wielding Norse Ubermensch, and a Nazi wizard who is a member of the ancient Dark Order of the Shining Hexagon. The Non-Standard Squad 1944 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us.
Oh, God. The Rise of the Lord Impaler. The newly installed ruler of Wallachia, Vladislav II, accompanies his benefactor, the King of Poland and Transylvania, John Hunyadi, as they launch an attack on the Ottomans. Our man Vlad, not yet the Impaler, hooked up with an Ottoman force and took it to the Wallachian throne. In the Battle of Kosovo in October 1448, the Ottomans annihilated Hunyadi's armor. However, Vlad was forced to flee when Vladislav II returned with his reconstituted force. Vlad spent a little bit of time in exile, ducking Hunyadi and Vladislav's sight until 1456. Hunyadi puts Vlad III in charge of defending Transylvania. This whole idea of keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer didn't really work out for Hunyadi this time around. It seems like the first thing that Vlad did was rally the Hungarians and invaded Wallachia. He murdered Vladislav II, and he sent letters out to everybody. This is like... he tweeted out. He murdered Vladislav II, took the throne, and then he tweeted out saying that he was still planning on doing his duty as protector of Transylvania. However, he was now the Prince of Wallachia. And it's called the Vodovev, or something like that. Vodovev, something like that. I just will say prince, or king, or ruler, or whatever. So he went on a couple house cleaning missions. He murdered some local political elites. Actually, before he he actually invited them all to dinner. When they showed up at his castle, he asked them, he says, "Hey, how many rulers of Wallachia have you known?" And they were like 12, 13, whatever. So what that showed Vlad was that that they didn't understand how to respect a ruler because they just seen him come and seen him go. So he captured all of them. He marched them across the land and had them repair an older castle. He was basically enslaved them and made them build up his castle. He used this local political elite as a slave force to build up the fortifications around this castle, and then he murdered them. He actually probably pegged them. This is probably the first of the impalings that happened. He had a quick war with the Saxons. I want to say the Saxons of Transylvania. Some political misadventure in Poland, sacking of some Transylvanian villages for their riches. He had a political rival named Dan the Third. Some of his supporters were pegged, skinned, and or burnt alive. And then he finally got his hands on Dan the Third and murdered that fucking guy. By 1456, Vlad the Third stopped paying jizya to the Ottoman Empire. And you're like, what's the jizya? That's what I said. It sounds like a Wu-Tang Clan guy. I don't know. Jizya is the tax. So basically, by paying jizya to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Vlad's saying, hey, this is an Ottoman land, and we are just paying to live here. Write that down. Keep it. We're going to be paying jizyas pretty soon, everybody. I want to just back up a little bit. When I talk about pegging or impaling these people, I just want to, explain it, because in the Bram Stoker, that Brian De Palma, the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie, they kind of misrepresent it. In that movie, they have him stabbing the guy through the chest and then lifting up the spear, and the guy just sinks down kind of horizontally. Is the best way that I can put it. Where historically, Vlad's impaling method was a little bit more vertical. All right, here's the best way to describe it. They take a stick. All right, so here, you sharpen one end of the stick. Now, whichever end you put into the ground, that's open to debate, I suppose, because there's plenty to suggest that they put the non-sharp end into the rectum. And I'm like, rectum, son, it damn near killed him, and it did. And so they would insert it in there, and then they would just stand him up, kind of think about like a scarecrow. And they would slowly sink down, and their innards would pour out of down there, and then eventually the stick would protrude out through the neck or behind the collarbone, or sometimes in the throat area, it would pop out. And when these people die, they weren't dying of bleeding, or they weren't dying of their innards plopping out of them. They were dying from a fucking exposure. So you have to think, it took Christ 3 days to die on the cross, and he had help because he got speared through the lung. And he got vinegar thrown in his face. This is an awful fucking way to go. Awful way to go. And I'm not going to hold it against anyone if they had nightmares after they hear the end of this story. Hold on. After that, I gotta lube up the other end. So in 1556, Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Third, Vlad the Impaler, stopped paying the jizya tax to the Ottoman Empire. And like I said, the jizya tax is the tax that we, the kuffar, pay the caliphate to live in a Islamic land. The new Ottoman Sultan, this is not the guy that locked them up when they were kids. This is his son, Mehmed II. They call him the Conqueror because he conquered Constantinople. He was the dude that fucking did that. So, when you hear that They Might Be Giant song, Istanbul was Constantinople, but now they changed the name. Why they changed the name, I don't know. They liked it better that way. I'm going to tell you, they didn't like it better that way. I'm going to hold the end of that joke. Okay, hold on. Just for later. I'll get to it. The conqueror of Constantinople summoned Vlad, and then he sent a spy force to capture him as he crossed the Danube. They figure if we crossed the Danube, they could get him without any kind of military repercussions. But Vlad heard about the trap, and in turn, he captured that force and murdered them, probably pegging them. He then went across the Danube and he sacked and raided an Ottoman fortress. And so he would roll up like a boss. Like, he would roll up and he would say, like, in perfect fluent Turkish, because you have to understand, he was like a Turkish slave or courtesan or whatever. I hate bowing to these fucking apologists, but because I don't know, I kind of have to play both sides of the fence. So either he was in a dungeon learning Turkish or he was a courtesan learning Turkish. I don't know. So he would just be like, drop your draw gate or whatever in like Turkish, and they would just destroy these fortresses. So he was in effect, he was invading the Ottomans. And he's just like, Wallachia is like the size, like, of my ass. You know what I mean? He wrote a letter that he had seen the death of 23,884 Turks for the quote, for the preservation of Christianity and the strengthening of the Catholic faith, unquote. After hearing of this invasion, the Sultan raised a huge army of 150,000 men, second only to the standing army that guarded Constantinople. This army was an army of occupation. Mohammed the Conqueror meant to take Wallachia. So just hang on. We're going to get to the next phase of the story, which is called The Jihads of Mohammed the Conqueror. And we're going to get to know the opposite side of this coin here right after this.
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. This story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
The Many Jihads of Mohammed the Conqueror. Mohammed II, or Mohammed the Conqueror, was born in 1432. His father was Sultan Murad II. That was the asshole who kidnapped Vlad III and his brother Radu. So now that I'm thinking about it, they could have known each other, while Vlad and Radu were being courtesans or renting a room in a dungeon. Like, what if there was like a Peanut-like, Charles Schultz, like the Peanut-like comic strip, with Vlad and Radu having to hang out in a dungeon and put up with this stuck-up Mohammed II, while they were as kids? That would be really funny. I'll put that in the bin of ideas that I give you guys away for free. So Dracula might even knew this punk. He first ruled, Mohammed the Conqueror first ruled when he was 12. Reportedly, he put down a crusade of John Hunyadi's old man, who tried to wage a crusade against him. And then his dad took control again. Eventually, Mohammed II ascended to the throne again in 1451. This dude was a fanatic. His only goal seems to be Islamic expansion. And he set his eye on Constantinople. Building up his navy, he took control of the Bosphorus Straits at its straightest point. At his most narrowest point. And he levied a toll or tax on any ship within the range of his cannon. He would slaughter sailors if they didn't stop to pay tribute. This is just a tribute. He actually turned a guy into a scarecrow by impaling him. So you'd think, I wonder where Vlad got his ideas here. In 1453, just like 2 years after he took control again, with 200,000 troops, Mohammed started the second siege of Constantinople. He had some things going for him. He had some warships, and he had a huge gun. When he actually had more than one huge gun. I wrote that wrong in my lesson plan. When they got there and started the siege, he created like these makeshift on-site forges. And they built these gigantic cannons, and they had marble cannonballs. They would just think about like a fucking cannon shooting like a 30-inch in diameter fucking bowling ball. That's what these things did, and he was manufacturing them there on the site. Imagine you're a guard, you're one of the defenders of Constantinople. And you're just at night. There's no fighting going on because they stopped fighting at night. So it's just like you're sitting there on your wall, you're watching, you're waiting like to doze off or do whatever you're gonna do, and you just see them pouring all this molten metal into these fucking things, just building these cannons while you're watching. You're helpless to do anything about them. Man, that shit's scary. I mean, these guns were gigantic. The warship. They had some warships that they sent with them. This number 28 it's sketchy because I saw where he broke off a contingent of 70 warships later on in the story. So I don't know. I'm just going to leave the number out of him. He had some warships. So at the time, the Roman Empire was kind of split between Rome and Constantine. Actually, the Roman side fell a long time ago, and the Vatican was basically carrying a torch for that side. So Constantinople was the Eastern Orthodox side of it. The Catholic Church would have been the Roman side of it. It was said that as long as the moon was in the night sky, Constantinople would not fall. Well, you're going to see. We're going to get there. So right before the siege started, Mohammed offered Constantine the 11th, who was the emperor. Technically, he was kind of the Caesar, but he was the emperor of the eastern side of the Roman Empire. I don't know how to explain it. Mohammed II offered Constantine the 11th life. His life to be spared, and he'd be able to rule a little walled-off city of Mistra, which was out by ancient Sparta. If that, he would surrender Constantinople to the Ottomans. Constantine the 11th might as well have been called Constantine the fucking Doomed, because this is what he writes back. To surrender the city to you is beyond my authority, or anyone else who lives in it. For all of us, after taking the mutual decision, shall die out of free will without sparing our lives. So basically he's like, yo, it's on, son. So the walls were taking a pounding with these gigantic guns and shit that I was just talking about. But at night, the soldiers would repair them. And on the 12th day, there was a break in the wall, and Sultan Mohammed II called for a general assault. So all of his fucking guys started assaulting this crack in the wall. And Constantine the 11th, who I just named the Doomed, met the assault with arrows and Greek fire and repelled the attacking Ottomans. So, like, kind of miraculously, outgunned and outnumbered, he was able to, when this general assault was called, he was able to, like, repel them and fight them back. Now, if you look at a map of Constantinople from back in the day, you'll see it's right there on the Bosphorus. And there's like this harbor that comes in. It's called the Golden Horn. And it comes in and it creeps right around Constantinople. And Constantinople's kind of like this peninsula. So right now, one of the things that Constantine the 11th does, and he's got a buddy with him, Justinian, they they stretched this gigantic harbor chain across the Golden Horn to this place called, I think it's called like Greta. I don't know. Anyhow, they stretch it across, blocking off the harbor. So when they know their ships are coming, their supply chain's coming in, they can lower the chain and friendly ships can pass right through. Then they raise the chain, and when bad guy ships try to come through, the chain's up and they get rebuffed because of this gigantic chain. They call it a harbor chain, and it's fucked up because when you look at like Wiki, they say erroneously that Mohammed II's forces put the harbor chain in to fuck them up, but they're wrong because the defenders of Constantinople put that up to block them. So right now, really, because it's a peninsula, all they have to do is worry about one side of the city wall. Now later, you're going to see they're going to have to redeploy a little bit, and that's when their shit starts falling apart. I think I've said too much. I've given it away. So Constantine stretched this massive chain across the Golden Horn to stop Mehmed's navy. I'm trying to be respectful from the guy's name. Mehmed, his navy. The Ottoman navy tried to get into the harbor, but the chain held. On day 31, the Ottomans tried to organize a massive attack. But once again, they were repelled. On day 37, they attacked the wall with a massive siege tower. This massive siege tower. Another of the heroes, besides Constantine the 11th, was Justin Ina. Justin Ina. And he destroyed their siege tower with barrels of gunpowder that he would roll underneath them. So, in my brain, like, this should be a Donkey Kong video game. Like, the siege tower coming in, and the defenders of this walled city rolling these barrels down, and blowing up the siege tower. That's hilarious. And I dig it, man. So, here we get into my neck of the woods. The Ottomans started to dig tunnels and trenches under the walls of the city. This is the deployment of what's called sappers. You deploy your sappers, and they sap the strength of your walls by, literally damaging their structural integrity or compromising their structural integrity or causing a workaround. You get a small tactical force underneath the wall by digging underneath it. So this is all combat engineering. This is 100% mine counter mine, mobility counter mobility action. Of course, it's based around a siege instead of actually a mobility, but it's the same shit, and it's fought off the same fucking way. These tunnels and trenches were thwarted by a combat engineer, y'all. His name was Jonas Grant, and he dug parallel and intersecting tunnels to defeat the original tunnels and trenches. This guy, Johannes Grant, he did the same thing that the guys in Vienna in 1683 did when their sappers were deployed. It's fucking brilliant. This guy deserves to be some sort of saint somewhere. Similar moves. So, in order to envelop the city, Mohammed, I'm trying not to butcher his name because I don't want to offend anybody. Knew that he had to access the Golden Horn, the harbor of the Golden Horn, the harbor in the Golden Horn. But this fucking chain was a pain in his ass. He ordered a bunch of his ships to actually be pushed up on land, drug and pushed them with oxen and men and slaves on the land for miles to bypass this goddamned chain. Once they got the boats back in the water, they totally surprised the defenders of Constantinople. The defenders of the city had to stretch out. They had to redeploy. They had to look. Instead of defending one side of the wall now, they had to defend the one side they were previously defending, plus the whole side where the sea wall is. So this is bad news for these defenders. and their shit started to fall apart real fast. The city fell May 29th, 1453. The day before it was going to fall, the Ottomans knew it was going to fall, and they just called a day off. They just chilled and prayed or whatever. They fucked some goats and stuff. I don't know what they did. And the walls fell. The Ottoman took the city. Mehmed II this is what kind of fucking guy that Vlad was dealing with, all right? So you're like, yes, but he impaled people and he skinned people and he did all these mean things. Well, listen to this shit. This city of Constantinople was not a threat. They were not pushing out. They were actually under strength at the time, which is one of the reasons that Mehmed II chose this time to strike. So this is what kind of guy he's fucking dealing with. The walls fell. The Ottomans took the city. Mehmed II gave his soldiers 3 days to plunder the city. The fall of Constantinople soon became a living hell for the surviving defenders, the elderly, the women, and the children. The elderly were massacred, for they were useless. The surviving soldiers were massacred. Women and children were captured into slavery. There's accounts of women in the city killing themselves to escape the gang rape that was happening from the dicks of the invading Ottomans. In the end, it's estimated that 4,000 defenders were killed and 30,000 fucking Christians were enslaved by these savages. They marched Constantine's headless body down the streets and around the city. He's still regarded as a Greek, a hero in Greek culture. We'll see that towards the end. And this is just this is just Mehmed's first conquest. He went on to be a prolific, blood-soaked, nightmare-fueled jihadist. Serbia in 1454, 1459. Moria, 1458 to 1460. And the Black Sea coast, 1460 to 1461. And that's where this leaves us right here. This is where we left off. There's actually way more after this Wallachia misadventure, but I need just to bring his current right now. 1459. Well, hold on. I need to back up when I'm talking about the plunder of Constantinople. Even the shitty things that I wrote on here didn't really capture what was going on. I'm not saying that these people were peaceful. You know, they were waging like crusades and stuff, like going in, and they had waged crusades, and they've been part of the supply chain of the crusades, you know, going into the Holy Lands and whatnot. But Mehmed II wanted expansion. He wanted to take the city, and he wanted to take the city, and instead of building a city or building something, beautiful mosques and all this stuff, he just wanted to take it because it was already there. So there's this story about him. He goes, like, after the third day of plunder, he goes into like the big church and he's like, yeah, this is now a mosque. You know, this is all a mosque. Soak up all this blood or whatever, and we're going to just start praying in here, like, right now. It was just stealing like all their stuff. And, you know, I know you apologists are out there saying like, well, that's what they would do in the Holy Land and all that stuff, but this isn't the fucking Holy Land. Like, this is just their like big city. It's the bright lights, big city, son. You're not going to get away with that in New York City, boy. So he just wanted to take the architecture. He said, this is the pearl of the new world or whatever. And I'm just going to take it and make it my own. So I don't know if you can tell I'm really worked up. I'm really worked up about this. But anyhow, this leaves us right where we left off. Mehmed II is amassing an army to push, to punish Vlad Dracula and take Wallachia. So I'm going to take a drink. I'm going to try to calm down a little bit, and we're going to get into the night battle of Targoviste.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jin Jihad. The Jin Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization and their ultimate weapon, a corrupted, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jin Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
The Night Battle of Targoviste. So Vlad hears of this army marching towards Wallachia, and he's had dealings with this Sultan Mohammed II before. He was raised in the dungeons of this Ottoman Empire, or the courtesan, whatever. His forces were wildly outnumbered, but Vlad Dracula would soon develop a plan, exactly what Sun Tzu would have done. And I stand by that. I think he would. Maybe not the particular details, but he decided to do guerrilla small unit tactics, harassing the enemy, playing on the vanity and arrogance of Mohammed II. Mind games / psychological warfare, the use of terrain to his full advantage, and to use the cover of darkness. In a last-ditch effort, Ottoman ambassadors came to Vlad, and they were like, "Yo, is there any way we could talk this out? You could really just still pay your jizya and all that stuff, and we could just go, and there won't be any kind of war." And Vlad looks at him and he's like, "Yo, when you're in my presence, you take off those silly hats." Which, if you see any paintings or drawings of Vlad, you'd think that was funny because all he wears is silly hats. I mean, I wouldn't say that to his fucking face, but the dude wore silly hats. And they're like, no, it's against our tradition and our culture to show the top of our heads to anybody. And he was like, "All right, bet. I'll help you with that." And so his soldiers held the fucking guys' heads down and fucking nailed their turbans into their fucking heads. And he was like, "Now you go to your boss, you go to the Sultan, and you tell him when he's in my land, he needs to pay attention to my tradition. And that shit gets my dick hard, son." Yeah, I lost my whole fucking train of notes. Oh, okay. So as the Ottoman army were making their way to Targoviste, they would have some skirmishes here and there. Like I said, Vlad had, he decided to do these, small unit tactics, harass the enemy and retreat into the night. And Vlad, would send his men to poison the wells and the water near where the Ottoman camps were going to be, burning the crops. Armies march with their bellies. So it's like there's nothing to eat or drink around. You got a supply train behind you? Maybe. He also diverted the water into lowlands and trails, making their way hard for horses, supply trains, and heavy soldiers. He sent sick, plague-stricken bastards into the Ottoman camps, leprosy, tuberculosis, syphilis, bubonic plague, to mingle around the Ottomans, getting them fucking sick. On June 17th, the Ottomans set up camp south of Targoviste. And Vlad, actually, he dressed like an Ottoman soldier, and he walked freely into their camp, scouting it out. He was trying to actually find where the Sultan's tent was. He later regrouped with his force, and they regrouped with his force, and he split the main force off. And he kept, we'll say, 10,000 guys. And the main force was supposed to ride around and attack at like a given time. So he took his smaller force, so like 10,000 dudes. They snuck into the camp under the cover of darkness. So you have to understand they were like zipped up in their tents. They were dehydrated, sick, and tired, and hungry. I forgot to write they were fucking hungry too. And Vlad and his men started doing God's work. I'm talking about the Old Testament God. They start doing God's work. It's quoted, spent the entire night, and they sped like lightning in every direction, causing a great slaughter. The Sultan, there's actually reports that the Sultan fled the camp, scared to death, and didn't come back until morning, which would explain why Vlad didn't find him and slash him in his fucking tent. The commander of the conventional force got scared and did not attack as planned. They abandoned the Ottoman camp before daybreak, and they rode into Targoviste with many Ottoman prisoners. At Targoviste, the first wave, so the Ottomans followed them. They were marching towards Targoviste anyways. The first wave attacks, and Vlad's men kill and capture about 23,000 Ottomans. So that's killing and capturing about 23,000. So we don't know how many were alive and how many were dead when this particular phase of the plan took place. As the second wave, which included Mohammed the Conqueror, arrived at the battlefield, their horses trotted into a mad red hell. After the first wave, Vlad had brought up a forest of trees, staves made out of trees. And after the first wave, they had taken the corpses and the prisoners and impaled them all. 23,000 Ottomans screaming and dying, slowly sliding down their pikes. For a moment, Mohammed the Conqueror said, "What do you do?" To a man who is capable of doing this horror, and did not enter the field. At this point in time, I should have mentioned earlier that Vlad's brother, Radu, actually went back into the fold, and he was now going to be a puppet king for Mohammed. So they were going to march into Wallachia, take it over, install Radu as the new king, and so that was their plan. So Radu was there. Mohammed was a little yellow, leading from the rear, as they call it. It's a great President Obama term. Vlad ran, and he held up in a castle. He held up in Castle Dracula. I think that there's like 4 or 5 buildings that are called Castle Dracula now. It's probably all because of tourism. So I'm not sure which one this was or what area of the country. He was out of troops and he was out of luck. Eventually, the Ottomans sieged the castle. Vlad escaped with the help of some gypsies, which is awesomely classic thing to say and to think about. He put his horse's shoes on backwards and ran for his life into Transylvania. He would soon get captured by the Hungarian king, and he would be locked up for 12 years. During this time, the Ottomans put Vlad's brother, Radu, who is now called Radu the Handsome, onto Wallachlia's throne as a puppet. Eventually, Vlad was let go, and he returned home. In 1475, after Vlad was released, Vladu the Handsome died, and Vlad III took over Wallachia again. And once again, he started warring with the Turks. 1477, a new contender to the throne showed up, and again, he was backed by the Ottomans. Soon, Vlad's body was found. These fucking savages butchered him, and they sent his fucking head to Mohammed II, who, I don't know what he did with it. He made it into a hat. Say, boy, do you like my new hat? So a lot of these guys are, well, hold on. So they sent Vlad's fucking head to Mehmet II. I don't know what he did with it. I don't know if he made it into a hat. I just made that up. I don't know. But hang tight. We're going to wrap this sucker up right after this.
Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on the Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, the Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
All right, so a lot of these guys are renowned as national or just heroes in their religions or whatever. In Romania, Vlad Dracula is held up as a nationalist and a hero. And honestly, he's one of these guys I wrote about in Vienna 1683. He's one of these guys that we're probably not all speaking Turkish right now because of this fucking guy. And he's fucking forest of impaled people. Mehmed the Conqueror. Turkish Muslims love this guy. All of Islam loves this guy. You can actually catch videos of Arab Muslims giving lectures about Mehmed II, explaining that they still call us kuffars, which is crazy that no one gives a shit about that. But they're like, yeah, out of all the battles in all of the world, even the kuffars will say that the Battle of Constantinople is like the coolest battle and most valiantly fought battle that there was. And I mean, dragging some boats a couple miles, like Alexander the Great did that shit, you know, not to take anything away from him, is a good way to open up a second front in your battle. But dude, if you got people destroying your shit by like playing Donkey Kong with some fucking barrels of gunpowder, I don't know. And Constantine the 11th is still a hero in the Greek tradition. So thank you guys for listening to this. I appreciate it. If you know anyone who might like these kind of topics or whatever, this kind of show, please share it with them. I would super appreciate it. Also, another great way to support the show is buy some comic books, especially if you like episodes like this. I have a graphic novel called The Jin Jihad, and I got a couple books, like comic book size comics, called The Scorpion Strikes and Test of the Scorpion. You guys just heard the spots for them. I'm not going to repeat all that bullshit, but great stuff. Vienna 1683 is another one. It's a lot like this story, actually, except you don't get to wear Cyrus as a hat. Go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. I got some fun stuff coming up in the newsletter at the end of the month. I promise. I know I've been talking about it forever. You go to the website, stigmatastudios.com. If you go there, up in the upper left-hand side, there's links to all my social media accounts. You can find it there. Insta, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. There's a Abracast Facebook page. You can check that out. I'll post a bunch of stuff up there. I usually post videos of whatever topics that we covered. So this week, definitely, I'm going to post up the opening scene to Bram Stoker's Dracula, where Gary Oldman fucking drinks the blood of that cross and he's renouncing Jesus Christ and God, because that shit, whew. And Twitter website again is www.stigmatastudios.com. You can tell my energy level is dropping. I need to go watch some Alien movies to get prepped for Covenant tomorrow afternoon. So thank you very much, and we will catch you guys next week. I'm not sure what the topic is going to be yet, but we'll get it worked out. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. He's dead. He's dead. Bela Lugosi's dead. He's dead. He's dead. Bela Lugosi's dead. He's dead, he's dead. Bela Lugosi's dead.